The biggest difference between the regular shear and the thinning shear is that the thinning shear has little teeth, and they can have a different distance between those teeth, and they have different purpose. For example, with the thinning shears where there is a bigger gap like here, you're gonna be able to do a super fast and shaggy looking haircut. It's gonna look even and it's gonna be extremely fast. That's the most important feature of it, that you're gonna work very speedy. So it's gonna be enable you to do a full body trim even with a pair of shears in case they are from this type. Super fast. The second one is more like evening up the trim. They're gonna work significantly slower. They are perfect, all of them are perfect for the face, tail, and just blending the body in case you use a different blade number, for example, for the body or for the legs, and you blend in that area, or shape up the paws to make them rounded but still shaggy looking, not that super sharp lined, super rounded the poodle thingy look. So they are amazing to reach that, and the smaller gap between the teeth, the slower the shear will work for you, but the more blended in look you will get. So in general, since they are kind of pricey, in general, if you want to do a full body trim on your doodle with shears or want a super smooth facial look, I recommend at least this one or this one. In case you just want to work on the face area, a little bit of touch up here and there, and you want to do the majority of the trim with clippers, then you can get away with one of these or one of these as well. If you want to do a super detailed trim, then I suggest all three, of course, but you're gonna be totally fine with one or two of these. They come in different sizes, so depending on the purpose you will use them, you can either get a small one or a larger one, at least from this brand. And the smaller one will work on larger doggies as well. It's a little bit easier to get used to them since the sharp surface is significantly less than on the big one. However, in case you're working on a large doggy, you have a standard doodle, a standard size doodle, then I would suggest to get a big one and take the time to get used to the length, because you're gonna regret it in case you go with the small one, and you're gonna get the hang of it fairly fast. I promise. It's not like you have to do it for 6 or 8 haircuts, not at all, not like that. You have to practice a little bit with the other doggy to handle it, and then you're gonna be totally good to go, especially with the swivel thumb which we're gonna talk about in a second. So you can get either one, the small, I think they even might be in the same price range, I can't remember, but check it out, and you can get whatever you feel comfortable with. Even for smaller doggies on the body part, I would suggest the long one, because it's just gonna work so much faster, and it just adds up. So in case you want to take the time and you're okay with that, and your doggy will cooperate for a little bit longer grooming sessions and your hands can handle that, then you can go with a smaller one or with thinning shear that has less gaps between the teeth. But in general, this is a joker tool, I think. This is another type. You can compare the two, that they have bigger gaps around and they have smaller gaps around, and it's just a different size. They are really cool, and they have this one for grooming, and I don't think they sell this particular type in a smaller version. They might already, I don't know. The thinning shear belongs to the shear group, which I call final haircut shears. They will do amazing haircuts. They are extremely sensitive to dirt and mats, so you really have to work on an absolutely spotless, clean and dry coat, preferably dry. You can use them on a wet coat, but it's definitely not suggested. They are stainless steel, they're not going to rust in case you keep them tidy and clean, as you should anyways, but dry coat will give you such more even look, because the hair will stand differently when it's wet due to the weight, and it's gonna stand differently on the dog when it's dry because it's gonna be lighter, especially if you brush out after or meanwhile drying. So you need to do the haircut on a dry coat, not just to keep the tool long lasting, but to get the look you're looking for without going too short. They are extremely sharp, so I'm not gonna do the test what I did with the little pre-haircut shear, where I just squeeze my finger with it. We're not gonna do that with this one. Actually, the goal with the final haircut shears, how I call them, anything from thinning shears to straight or curved shears, we're not gonna touch skin with the sharp edges, ever, because they will draw blood. They cut the skin like in amazingly easily and deep. So you definitely want to avoid the inner things getting close to anyone's skin, let it be you, your helper, or the doodle. One of my favorite things about this type of shear is that they have a swivel thumb. That means this little thing is moving around. So when I'm holding the shear and I'm working on a tricky spot, so for example in the inner thigh of the doggy, I can move my thumb. I can keep my thumb in the same direction, and I can move the shear in a way that I'm gonna still reach the area on the doggy, yet my hands will stand comfortably and will be kept comfortable. With this type of shear, it's extremely hard to get to tricky areas, but with a swivel thumb, it's gonna be incredibly easy. It makes the shear more expensive, but on the long run, it will save you huge with your hands. So in case you have multiple doodles, I would highly recommend you to invest in a shear that has a swivel thumb, because that's just gonna be so much easier. I highly recommend to get a haircut shear which has a finger rest as well, so you can hold the shear very steady and do the haircut easily and safely. Quality of the thinning shear. As with everything, there are several different type of brands, and the higher the price, the better the quality. So you need to weigh which value you're looking for, whether it should be cheaper but still work because you're not gonna use it on all over the doggy just for quick touch-ups like around the face and you're gonna clip or cut the rest of the body, or you're gonna do a shear trim all over the doggy and you have 3 doodles at home and you like to keep the hair longer on them, so you're gonna use the shear quite a lot and all over the doggy because you like the length longer than an inch, which the snap-on comb would be able to handle. So I recommend you to think about all of that and weigh whether you should get a more expensive one. Definitely you're gonna get a better look with a thinning shear, which is more expensive. However, you can do gorgeous haircuts with a cheaper one as well. It's gonna take a little bit longer to get the hang of it with those, but it absolutely can be done. Handling the thinning shear, as we talked about, we're not gonna touch the skin, any kind of skin with the middle section of the shear, because it's extremely sharp. It's not like the little thinning shear. Whenever we are using thinning shears, we need to keep in mind the length. So whenever you are moving around with the shear and you're opening it up, I highly recommend you to open it up only for the spot you are working on. So in case you're working around the eyes, you need to open it up just like that much, because you're just gonna work on a teeny tiny spot in the inner corner, and that's gonna be very helpful. In case you're working on the bangs, you can go and open it up wider, but you need to make sure that you're holding the doggy's head, so in case they move, you're not gonna cut in the eye. Whenever we are using a longer shear, even with a shorter one, we need to keep in mind the tricky areas on the doodle. Whenever we are setting the length on the belly and we are getting closer to the belly thigh flap, this is the hind leg, this is the belly, and this is that soft skin around there, which is sort of like a flap here, and you're setting the length there, you need to make sure that you're not going too close there, because you're gonna need stitches in case you get too close around that area with this type of shear. And you need to use it on absolutely clean coat and preferably on dry coat, because that's gonna keep the shear long lasting. I love to use thinning shears all over the doggy, anywhere basically, because you can't really go wrong with them as long as you're not hurting the dog. They are amazing to avoid the lines. I use the thinning shears most often on the face, on the ears, cheeks, chin, basically all around the head area, and blending in the rest of the body along with trimming and shaping up the tail. It's great to do an even doodle look on the face without any kind of lines. Same thing applies to around the feet. So you're not gonna get that sharp round feet look like a longer poodle trim, but you're gonna be able to keep the shaggy looking, still groomed and fresh looking, but more shaggy looking feet with using thinning shears. They are great for winter coat whenever you are just doing a little trim all over the doggy, not like a major haircut. And to smoothen out and blend in tricky spots where the doggy had mats and you're trying to hide them. In the well-being course, we're going to talk about how to use the thinning shears for the eye area, so you're going to be able to trim the doggy's hair around the eyes, inner, outer corner, and bangs so your doggy can see. Doing a full trim on the face and the ears is going to be the topic of the beauty and style course.